Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all had a good lunch, had a bit of coffee, so you will tentatively follow the session. And I would like to remind you that you can rate the talks as well as the conference. This is a great help to us as program committee and organizers to make the next conference even better for you. Our first speaker today is Robin Daermann from Ruhr-University Bochum, and he will actually explain us how to save IPv4 addresses on your IPv6-Mostly deployment.
Introduction. So, my name is Robin Daermann. And I would like to share our first experiences with deploying IPv6-Mostly. And that's from the perspective of a university campus. So first to myself, I am technically responsible for the data network of Ruhr-Universität Bochum. We are a team of 7 members, and we manage about more than 5,600 devices, actually, and lots of them with automation, of course. And it's almost everything is self-made, and we are some sort of Perl guys. we don't do Python. So our motivation is we are trying to push IPv6 wherever possible since more than 12 years now. And traditionally, we do it with the dual stack approach, so by simply configuring IPv6 additionally to the existing IPv4 deployment, or additional with new deployments. But since 2022, we did some NAT44 because, as you all know, IPv4 addresses are short now. And even we only have 1/16 IPv4, and it's nearly full. NAT44 with IPv6 in parallel works good, but this can be done better because, as I have printed here in larger letters, not even one single IPv4 address has been saved, and that's what we try to accomplish. Because we are a university, we have lots of different people, lots of different components, lots of different vendors, and everything beyond our control. So we can't do a hard cut. We can't simply switch off IPv4. We have to migrate somehow, because otherwise, too many problems would arise. A better approach than a dual stack could be to force the nodes to do more IPv6 or IPv6 traffic whenever possible, and therefore to avoid NAT, because we don't like NAT. NAT64, it's a form of NAT, but at least something with IPv6 in it. NAT64 with DNS64 came to our mind, but this has some problems. Because with NAT64, like with NAT44, some protocols need special handling, and you can't use IPv4 literals on the host. If you try to ping an IPv4 address and you don't have IPv4, then it doesn't work. And some legacy software wants to use IPv4 only sockets. That's a problem too. So we thought about another approach. It's called 464XLAT. Besides solving some of the problems, it has other problems. But 464XLAT is a combination of NAT64 on the provider side, called PLAT, and IP translator on SIT, IPv4 to IPv6 translator on the client side, on the node. It's called the CLAT. And the translation of IPv4 packets happens on the client, directly on the client. They get translated to IPv6 by the CLAT, and on the provider, they get translated back to IPv4 by NAT64. This has also some problems because it was originally designed for mobile ISPs that operate large IPv6-only networks, like the one Holger Mitchulat talked about yesterday. Therefore, some popular operating systems don't support it on Wi-Fi or on LAN. Some larger popular operating systems. But we will see that later. So IPv6-Mostly came to our mind, and it's a combination of a dual stack and IPv6-only network in the same network. So you can run clients IPv6 only if they are supported, and clients that don't support it run in the same network, but they run dual stack. And with DNS6.4, those dual stack running clients will do IPv6 traffic mostly. So IPv6-Mostly is a combination of two things. The first is a DHCP v4 option that's called IPv6-only preferred. It's a DHCP v4 option to actually turn off IPv4. That's fun. And the second thing is a router advertisement option that is introduced in RC 8781. That's called pref64. And pref64 is a way, or this option is another way of at least, I don't know, 5 other ways that we already have to distribute a NAT64 prefix to clients. So in combination, these two things save IPv4 addresses because endpoints can and will decide to use only IPv6 if they support it. And as I already said, nodes that don't support it will simply run dual stack. Yeah. Now, how does it work? The client usually initiates DHCP handshake with a discover message, and in the discover message, it requests option 108. It's a new option, as I already said. Normally, the option is not requested, but clients that think that they can run IPv6 only usually request option 108. That's already the case. We will see later. If a server that is configured accordingly receives the request for option 108, it delivers it back in the DHCP offer package, and it holds a timestamp. It holds a timeout. And if the client receives option 108 back, then it ignores the IP address that it got assigned in the offer. It just doesn't use it, and it sees option 108 has a timeout of, for example, 1 hour, and then for 1 hour the client disables its DHCP and runs IPv6 only. If, the second point, the router advertisement arrived with which contains option type 38, pref64, and in this option is delivered the NAT64 prefix, and the client can use it for DNS6.4 locally and for the CLAT configuration. So if the client receives both option 108 back and pref64 via router advertisement, then IPv6-Mostly is possible, and then the client can run IPv6 only. And if some IPv4 traffic gets initiated on the client, it gets translated via CLAT that is locally on the client. I did some graphic here. So it's basically what I explained. The DHCP discover gets sent by the client. Option 108 is requested, and it's sent back by the DHCP server with 3,600 as a value here. And roughly in parallel, a router advertisement is sent, and it contains DNS server, of course, preferably a DNS6.4 capable DNS server, and additionally the pref64. And if the client receives both the option 108 and the pref64, then it activates its CLAT engine and switches off IPv4 it doesn't really switch off IPv4, but it doesn't use IPv4 with the address offered by the DHCP server. It just uses the CLAT engine to translate IPv4 traffic to IPv6, and therefore runs IPv6 only. And the opposite case, if the client doesn't support IPv6-Mostly, it just doesn't request option 108, and everything gets as we all know it. So DHCP discover, offer, a request, and an ACK. And then the client has an IPv4 address, and in parallel, via router advertisement, the client gets its IPv6 prefix and can use the IPv6 address. And it's getting a DNS server 2 here, and it's a DNS6.4 capable DNS server. So basically, the client the client uses IPv6 for almost all of the traffic that it initiates. The pref64 simply gets ignored by the client, or I don't know. I don't really know what the client does with the pref64 if it doesn't support IPv6-Mostly. I assume it gets ignored. So the interesting part of that thing is we are a larger university, and we did some tests with it, and we deployed IPv6-Mostly, the configuration on a campus-wide wireless segment during August this year. And that wireless segment has an authentication via a captive portal. So I did measure the DHCP traffic. I captured the DHCP traffic with TCP dump, and I analyzed the DHCP discover messages. And between the end of August and the beginning of November, for a period of 9 weeks, I saw 10,794 different MAC addresses. That is different devices in total. And about 72% of them, of the devices that I saw, requested option 108. That's a lot. Because you need to know option 108 is specified in an RFC that is about 3 years old now. And it is from October 2020. So in between 3 years, 72% of the devices implemented, DHCP clients implemented that option 108. And that's, I don't know, in my opinion, it's fast. Then there are remaining 28%. And I took a bit, I looked a bit into these 28%, because the 72% is, it's almost all mobile devices, mobile phones, it's Android phones and iOS phones, and macOS computers. The macOS computers, or the macOS supports option 108, and iOS and Android in recent versions. And the remaining 28% are almost all Windows 10 devices. I quickly checked with the Fingerbank API and tried to categorize what operating systems are not requesting option 108 as of today. And I took the first 24-bit of the MAC address, zeroed out the last 24-bit, and I took the option request list from the DHCP discover and put these two things into the Fingerbank API and got the results. And two-thirds of the 28% was Windows 10. And the Apple OS and Android devices are older devices, older operating system versions that don't support option 108 yet. Then we saw Linux devices that doesn't support option 108 either. and a lot of other things, and a small army of vacuum cleaners. Please don't ask me how they managed to get behind the captive portal, because I only measure traffic after the captive portal, but some professor seems to clean his area with some vacuum cleaners. I don't know. It may even be a measurement error. I didn't look into it deeper. Yeah. So to configure IPv6-Mostly, first it's a bit complicated because what you have to do is you have to configure both IPv4 and IPv6 as you do it in the dual-stack environment, and additionally you have to configure your DHCP v4 server and you have to configure the router advertisements. So everything possible, everything you have to you have to do. It's a lot, but the DHCP server is the easy part, because the ISC Kia server natively supports that option. It's called v6 only preferred. You can simply configure it in a subnet, and then it gets sent if it is requested, and only then. The older ISC DHCP server that is end of life, I guess, now, it even supports custom options. You can send option 108 with a value. That's easy. And even on any other DHCP server that supports custom options, you can send it and assign an unsigned integer value. And that's the easy thing. More complicated is the router configuration for the router advertisement. And I only cover here what we are using in our network, because otherwise we would need longer time slot, I think. So Cisco IOSXE is what we use, and from version 17.11 that came out during the summer this year, I think, the NAT64 prefix is supported. And you just configure it in the interface VLAN. And of course, you should configure it along with DNS servers and maybe a DNS search list. And the DNS servers should be DNS64 capable. I quickly checked Arista EOS. They support it in their newest version. I didn't try it if it really works, but I tried to configure it and it works. And of course, you need the DNS servers too, but the configuration line is just a little different. What I assign here as the NAT64 prefix is the well-known prefix 64:FF9B. Yesterday evening, I heard that it is not always the best idea to use the well-known prefix, because some clients would not use the NAT64 well-known prefix if it should translate private IPs. So if you have private IPs, if the destination is a private IP, NAT64 would not be used if you use the well-known prefix. I did not check this, but just to keep it in mind, maybe it's better to use another prefix here than the well-known prefix. So the client configuration, there's not much to configure on a client, luckily, because you can't configure every client. If I had to configure 10,000 clients during 9 weeks, then I would be configuring clients all of my time, and it's not possible. So the client configuration is not there. The client, you have to avoid some things. For example, you don't set up custom DNS servers. For example, if a client has set custom DNS servers, you come into problems if they are not DNS64 capable, for example. And yeah, you don't disable IPv6 entirely on the client, of course, because yeah, we wouldn't talk if everything disabled IPv6 on its client. There's one thing on Mac OS, the Mac OS computers, not the mobile devices. Mac OS will pick a random IPv6 prefix of the prefixes it got via router advertisements. It will pick a random one for CLAT, for its CLAT engine, and it doesn't consider any deprecated or ULA prefixes. To me, it seems like a bug, but I did not investigate further until now. So don't use multiple IPv6 prefixes, or especially don't use ULA prefixes on IPv6-Mostly networks. Just to keep in mind, macOS is behaving not always as expected here. Don't disable stateless auto-configuration, because you need a separate IPv6 address for the CLAT. So the CLAT does not use the IPv6 address that you get statically configured or that you got via DHCP v6. It needs a separate one. And so don't do this line with no autoconfig at the end. I had this in one of our wired networks where I tested it last week, and I wondered why it doesn't work, and it's because the CLAT engine needs a separate IPv6 address. Yeah. One other thing is you should have free addresses in your DHCP v4 pool, because even if you don't want IPv4 and even if you need much less IPv4 addresses, you shouldn't have an empty pool, because if the DHCP v4 server has an empty pool, it doesn't send the offer package. And if there's no offer package, then no option 108 gets to the client. And then the client doesn't disable its IPv4 stack. It does the DHCP discover in a loop. So the client doesn't get to an IPv6 only state. And then I stumbled upon an issue with our Cisco routers. We use iOS XE 7.12. It was introduced with 7.11, but we use 7.12 now. And I saw that the ARP table was full of IPv4 addresses. That's because as you could see on the last slide, the Cisco router is the DHCP helper, is the DHCP forwarder for IPv4. And if the router sees DHCP offer package, it picks the MAC address and the IP address and creates an ARP entry. And the DHCP offer always contains a valid IPv4 address, because the client may use it if the client chooses not to honor the option 108 in the offer. And yeah, the Cisco router creates an ARP entry, and it just times out after 4 hours. So that's not really a problem, but it's not nice to see. You get full ARP tables for no use. Okay, so our next step. So over the period of 9 weeks, it's a longer period, 12 or 14 weeks until now, that we are running the IPv6-Mostly wireless network. We didn't have any significant complaints about anything related to IPv6 only or dual stack or IPv6-Mostly or anything about the configuration. So our next step will be to roll out some wired segments. I already started testing with it. And we will try IPv6-Mostly in wired segments, although we know that Windows machines will not go IPv6 only, because they only support it on LTE or mobile connections. They simply don't activate the CLAT engine on wired or Wi-Fi connections. And therefore, OS vendors, that's our opinion, OS vendors should implement the necessary components for wireless and wired networks. Because what we see is the numbers are getting better. Andrei Chaletka measured at various RIPE meetings. He looked at the DHCP traffic, and the percentage of devices that request option 108 was always a bit higher. So the last slides I saw from him was 68% or 70%, and I measured 72%. The numbers getting higher. More and more clients are supporting option 108, and therefore are not using IPv4 addresses apart from the local CLAT engine. And for us, this is the way to go. I would like to see more operating systems, more operating system vendors implementing all the necessary parts. So that was it from my side. If you have any questions, please.
Thank you. Okay, 1, 2.
Wolfgang Tremmel, internet guy. Actually, it's in the RFC that you cannot connect from the well-known prefix to private IPv4 addresses.
Yes, this is what I heard from Thomas Schäfer yesterday. I didn't know it.
Alexander Lubudzinski, speaking for myself. Your statistics about the good and bad citizens, many modern devices changed their MAC address. Could that have skewed your results?
Yeah, maybe it could, but normally they only change their MAC address if the Wi-Fi gets deconfigured and reconfigured on the devices. And lots of people. I don't know if lots of people really do it. So go into the settings, delete the Wi-Fi, and re-edit. Then the MAC address changes, but normally it doesn't change if the Wi-Fi is configured. That's my experience. So maybe there is some percentage maybe we didn't see 10,000, but 9,500 devices. I don't know, but I can't really say.
Peter Hessler, internet user. At the most recent RIPE meeting, RIPE had deployed IPv6 mostly on the wireless for all the attendees, and a friend of mine had a problem utilizing it. He had a very recent Mac, fully up-to-date software. However, the corporate VPN solution was a fully up-to-date legacy IPv4 implementation, which completely broke with the 646 XLAC support.
Yeah.
And the solution there was he had to move to a different SSID that did not have that set, because in macOS at the time, you could not turn off option 108. So have you prepared for this type of scenario? Do you have any sort of information of what you could do for guests who run into this situation?
Yes, we have alternative Wi-Fi. we indeed have an alternative Wi-Fi SSIDs. That would be our solution in this situation. But during the last 3 months, we didn't have any complaint about it. But yes, I'm sure they will come. And then we would have to dig deeper into it and see what the problem is.
Okay, we have one question from the remote participants. Should I? Or? From Tom Hebers. The question is, are there any recommendations how to handle a network without DNS64 but Pref64 and IPv6 preferred? Last I checked, iOS and Safari had problems with those circumstances.
So if you have IPv6 mostly, but without DNS6.4, then you get clients that are able then the clients are not able to reach any destination without quad A record. So we didn't really test that scenario, but it doesn't seem to be the way. So you should use DNS6.4. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Ben, thank you very much. It's always good to hear IPv6 success stories.
Thank you.
And good luck with your future deployment. And
thank you.
Next.